Have you ever walked into the woods and felt like something was already waiting for you before you arrived? If you heard footsteps behind you, but every time you turned around nothing was there, would you keep walking or would you run? Because what happened to me that night still makes me question whether some places are meant to stay untouched before we start. Turn off the lights and raise the volume, because this forest horror story is not something you want to hear alone. This is with Anna 7. And now, let's begin. My name is Daniel. I never believed in ghost stories or the strange legends people tell about forests. I always thought fear was just the mind reacting to darkness and silence. But after what happened deep in those woods, I have never looked at trees the same way again. If you were in my place, would you have gone back for your friend or saved yourself? Listen carefully, because by the end of this story, you may ask yourself what was truly following us that night it started when my best friend Mark convinced me to join him. Late camping trip in a forest 2 hours outside town. The place was old and rarely visited, with narrow dirt roads, and no phone signal. Locals warned us not to stay after sunset, but we laughed it off, thinking they were just trying to scare outsiders. Have you ever ignored a warning because it sounded too ridiculous to be real? That is exactly what we did. We arrived just before evening. The forest looked normal at first: tall trees, endless shadows, birds calling in the distance. But there was something strange about the silence between those sounds. It felt heavy, unnatural, like the woods were holding their breath, waiting for darkness. Mark joked around while setting up the tent, but I kept noticing how quickly the light disappeared. Once the sun dipped below the trees, the entire place changed. Would you have noticed it too? Or am I the only one who felt it? Around 9 at night, we made a small fire and sat talking. Everything seemed fine until we heard a whistle somewhere in the distance. It was a slow, clear whistle, repeating the same short melody again and again. Mark said it was probably another camper, but I knew it was too far inside the forest for that. We called out, but no one answered. Then the whistling stopped instantly, as if whoever made it had been listening to us the whole time. Have you ever felt fear arrive all at once with no warning? An hour later, Mark said he needed to use the bathroom and grabbed a flashlight. He laughed when he saw how nervous I looked and told me he would be back in 2 minutes. I watched the beam of his flashlight move between the trees until it vanished. Then I waited. 2 minutes passed, then 5, then 10. I called his name, but there was no reply, only the sound of leaves moving somewhere beyond the dark. Would you have gone after him or stayed by the fire? I took my flashlight and followed the direction he had gone. Deeper I walked, the colder it became. I found footprints in the mud, but they were strange. Some were Mark's boots, and some looked barefoot, long, narrow prints, like someone walking on stretched human feet. I wanted to turn back, but then I heard Mark scream just once, sharp and terrified. It came from farther ahead. I ran toward it, branches cutting my face, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I reached a clearing where Mark's flashlight lay on the ground, still on, but pointing upward into the trees. He was nowhere around. I shouted his name again and again. Then something answered from the darkness, but it was not Mark. At first it sounded like him calling my name. Then the voice changed, becoming deeper, broken, wrong, repeating my name, Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. If you heard your own friend's voice coming from the dark like that, would you follow it? I backed away and grabbed the flashlight. That was when I saw movement between the trees. Something tall and thin stepped behind a trunk. Then another. I could not tell if it was one thing moving quickly or several shapes surrounding me. The beam of light shook in my hand, and every time it landed on them, they froze completely like statues. Then, when I looked away, they moved closer. I ran without caring where I was going. Branches snapped behind me, footsteps matched every step I took. Sometimes I heard Mark's voice begging for help. Sometimes I heard my own voice calling from somewhere ahead of me. How could that be? How could I hear myself when I was not speaking? I wanted to scream, but terror locked my throat. After what felt like hours, I saw the glow of our campfire in the distance. Relief hit me so hard my legs nearly gave out. I stumbled into the campsite and froze. Mark was sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. He slowly looked up at me and smiled, but something was wrong. His smile was too wide, his eyes did not blink, and his clothes were perfectly clean despite the mud where I found his flashlight. If your missing friend suddenly returned like nothing happened, would you trust him? He asked where I had been in a calm, flat voice. I could barely speak. I asked what happened in the clearing. He tilted his head like he did not understand the question. Then from somewhere in the forest behind us, I heard Mark screaming my name again, loud, desperate. And far away, the person sitting by the fire stood up slowly. The smile never moved. He took one step toward me, and I ran straight to the truck, leaving everything behind: tent, bags, food, all of it. As I drove away, I looked once in the mirror and saw him standing at the edge of the trees watching me. Then, beside him, other tall shapes emerged one by one. Police searched the area the next day. They found our campsite untouched, but there was no sign of Mark, no footprints, no flashlight, nothing. They told me trauma can distort memory. Maybe Mark got lost. But if that is true, then who was sitting by the fire? And why did I keep hearing his voice from the woods? Even after I reached the highway months later, I received a voicemail from an unknown number. There was only static at first. Then a whisper said, "Daniel, come back." I listened to it over and over because beneath the whisper I could hear trees moving in the wind. So tell me honestly, if your best friend called you from those woods today, would you go back to save him, or would you pretend you never heard the message? If you made it this far, tell me one thing. Would you ever go back into those woods? Or would you run the moment you hear a sound behind you? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next horror story, because what comes next might be even worse. This is with Anna 7, and I'll see you in the next one.